Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Am I live? I can't tell.
I'm not internet, so it's not. There, now you are.
Okay, it says we're live at last. Sorry it took 11 minutes over and above, but now we're live. So if you're out there, if there's anyone there and I'm not talking to myself, let me know. We had technical difficulties up the wazoo trying to get on today. We've gone through 3 computers to get here, but we're here. We're here. And I've got it set to comments, so you can let me know if you're out there. Give me a thumbs up or something, because I don't like talking to myself very much.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Ian's here and Alice. Hi, Alice. Thanks so much. Well, it's nice to know I'm not talking to myself. So because we're starting a few minutes late because of these technical difficulties, I'm just going to do a few slides to start with while people come back to see if I finally got on or not.
You can't share your screen.
I can't share my screen?
No, because it's live.
I can't share my screen because it's live. So the backup we did to get on, okay. Thank you, honey. Well, hello. This is a Q&A, but Michelle, my team told Michelle that we were going to do the Q&A next week, about 2 weeks ago, because they wanted to schedule someone for an interview. And then I found out, and I said, no. This is our time every month. And so I'm not interviewing somebody else. We're not going to set a precedent for that. This is the time for Michelle and I. But by then, Michelle had rescheduled and is seeing a client right now. So you got me. So this is a Q&A on whatever you'd like to talk about. So, Paul is in the house from Alaska. Great. Glad to see you're here. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to start until some questions come in with, I did a 3-hour presentation yesterday. You know, we've done the base hits protocol for the last 4 weeks, a program where I talk about the big picture and answer everyone's questions in a lot of depth. And last week was the 4th of the series. It's all available if you guys want to watch them. They're quite profound. And I was talking about something that I hadn't really talked about before, so I thought I'd start here. And that is, we all know that every degenerative disease, except for one that I know of that's a sodium deficiency, but every other disease is a disease of inflammation. At the cellular level, the cell's on fire. And the question is it a brain cell or a kidney cell? Is it gasoline or kerosene? But it's always a fire. So whatever your health concern is that you want to deal with, you always have to ask the question in the pretty early stages, who's throwing gasoline on the fire? Is it what I'm eating? Is it what I'm breathing? Is it what's already accumulated in my body from years of toxin exposure? What is it? Where is the gasoline coming from? And there's usually many sources. But in this era of the pandemic that we're in right now, people are worried about will they have or are they vulnerable to having a severe reaction with exposure to the virus. So I want to talk a little bit about how do you make sure that you don't have a problem. And there is a beautiful slide, but unfortunately I can't share my screen to show it to you. And I'm on my computer, so I can't bring it up and then hold the computer up to this camera. So I'm going to try and describe it to you. So there's one line that goes up and tapers down. And this line is, the bottom of it is you've got low inflammation right now. Then you're exposed to a virus and your immune system gets activated, it takes care of it, and it goes right back down. That happens to over 80% of the people on the planet who are exposed to this virus. But then there's another line in this graph It doesn't start here where the green line is. It's a red line, and it starts up here. That the level of inflammation, remember, if this is, you get a little inflamed, the immune system gets activated, there's inflammation, and then it tapers down because the inflammation kills the virus. But then the second line starts up here, much higher, as the baseline of inflammation. Now you get exposed to the virus, and the same kind of immune response comes up, and it deals with the virus, is trying to fight the virus, but now you're at fatal levels of inflammation. And this is what's happening to people who are put on respirators in intensive care. 89% of them die. In New York, they published a paper, the Journal of the American Medical Association in March, that 89.1% of the people in intensive care who were put on respirators died. Well, what's that about? Well, that's called the cytokine storm. A lot of inflammation, and the cytokine storm starts, but their baseline of inflammation was much higher. We call that comorbidities. That's the geek term for it. So people that had high blood pressure, they're always inflamed. People that have high cholesterol, they're inflamed. You know, people that had diabetes, they're very inflamed. So their baseline of inflammation is higher than the rest of the population when they're exposed to a virus that activates your immune system. So the goal here is to drop down the baseline of inflammation. So when you're exposed to a virus or any threat, your immune system, trying to protect you, can activate properly, and you don't run a risk of having excess amounts of inflammation. It's a great slide, and it's a great concept. So I hope that made sense as I was describing it. So I'm going to just scroll here and say hello to Mark, who's here from Winston-Salem, and Beth is here from California. Michelle's here. Debbie's in British Columbia. Kat's in Kentucky. Hello, Tammy. Nancy's in Buffalo. Dorada's in New York City. Dorada, you always put that with 2 exclamation points. It's like, yeah, New York City. So hello, nice to see you here. Tanuja's here from Sydney, Australia. Kasha's here from Southampton, UK. Hi, Kasha. Hi. Rich is here from Cleveland. Laura's here. Hi, Laura. And the list goes on and on. So the first question that I see here is from Tammy. It says, what is the best thing to do to reduce high blood pressure? First thing, Tammy, is to reduce the inflammation. So the question is, where is the high blood pressure coming from? And there are a number of different triggers that can cause that. The most common mechanism is when there's some problem with your kidney function. That's very, very common. But just to give you a sense of the range of symptoms or of triggers that can cause high blood pressure, that's why it's really hard to say, well, do this. Just go on Google and type in gluten and high blood pressure. And sometimes patients' blood pressure comes down in the normal range when they go gluten-free, sometimes. Or Google arsenic and high blood pressure. And people that have high arsenic are at very high risk of developing high blood pressure. Well, how do you get high levels of arsenic? Well, if you go gluten-free, many people increase their consumption of rice, which is not a bad thing to do. It's really good for you. Marzi and I had rice last night and left over for lunch today. But the vast majority of rice, of commercial normal rice, not organic rice, the vast majority of it now is high in arsenic, because arsenic's in the water, and rice plants, as you know, they sit in water all the time. So the plant sucks up the arsenic that's in the water. They harvest the rice is full of arsenic. You eat the rice, you get arsenic, and if your genetic vulnerability is to high blood pressure, you get high blood pressure from arsenic toxicity. There are so many different triggers to what might cause high blood pressure. I'm going to take that same question and say there are so many different triggers that might cause type 2 diabetes. You know, there are so many things that might do it. There's not what's the best thing to do. I'm sorry, but you can't approach it that way. So the thing to do is to identify where is the inflammation coming from. That's critically important with high blood pressure. And some people, that's the condition where I use the example. If you've got high blood pressure, you take the medications. You may need to take the medication if your blood pressure is dangerously high for a short period of time while you are exploring where's the inflammation coming from. Don't be silly about this. You have extremely high blood pressure, dangerously high blood pressure. You take the meds now. But you don't live on the meds. You explore where's it coming from, and you might use them for a few weeks, for a month, a couple of months, while you're dialing down where is this thing coming from, where's the inflammation coming from. That's how you reduce high blood pressure or reduce any autoimmune disease, is by lowering that titer. If you were here at the very beginning, I talked about this slide that I wanted to show you, but I can't because I had to go on myself. There was lots of technical difficulty. We went through 3 computers to get me on here today. And we can't use Zoom, so I can't use my slides. So anyway, that's the way that I would suggest you consider high blood pressure. You investigate. And how do you investigate? Well, if you've got the time, you read my books. You read the 2 books, or the second book is a little more of a how-to specific. You Can Fix Your Brain, that's the name of it. But if you don't have that kind of time and to learn and explore on your own, if you have high blood pressure, I wouldn't take the risk. You work with my clinical services team, and it'll take a couple of sessions and a few tests probably, depending on your history, to find out where's the trigger coming from. But that's how you find out. Okay. Tammy, I hope that helps. Nancy said, can you tell me to help get rid of Tinea Versacola? Can you tell me to help get rid, okay, how do you get rid of Tinea Versacola? You have to identify where is the condition coming from? Why is it there? And there are, once again, so many triggers that can cause Tinea Versacola, but it's a fungal infection of the skin. So the first question is, why is my immune system not handling this? Which means your immune system is probably worn down and working really hard just to try to keep you going. But it can't deal with this Tinea Versacola. It just can't deal with it. The second thing, where's the fungal exposure coming from? So you have to strengthen your immune system in order to deal with this. And the way you strengthen your immune system, many people know that over 70% of the immune system's in the gut. So what do you have to do? You have to rebuild the gut microbiome. When you have an immune-related disease, like a fungal infection, which is what Tinea Versacola is, your immune system isn't able to keep up with the amount of threat that is having to try and fight. So one thing I do with my Tinea Versacola patients, every one of them, is we check their house to see if there's mold in the house. And if they have mold exposure and mold problems and their system is already overworked fighting different types of mold. So that I put that at the top of the list. 2 things you can do. One, go to my friend Dr. Jill Carnahan's website. She's a mold expert. She really dialed it down because it almost destroyed her brain. And Jill is a don't mess with me kind of person when it comes to her health, because she had breast cancer while she was in med school. And she tells the story that all of the women in her support group that had the same type of cancer, they all died. But Jill didn't, because she changed her diet and she just started reading, and that's what got her into functional medicine. So when she discovered that she had mold and it was affecting her brain, she knew exactly what to do. She left that day. She left all her clothes, she left all her books, all the furniture, all of it. Went to a hotel, rented a new apartment, and then figured out what to do to treat herself, and just left all of that behind. I had to do the same thing. It turned out I had mold at my home in Encinitas, California. You know, I live on the bluff looking in the ocean, and the humidity, I mean, you couldn't see it, you couldn't smell it, I didn't know. But it turned out to be the same. And when I found out, I was out of there within 2 weeks. And I moved to Italy to be with Marzi, but that was the impetus that got me to go now, while Marzi was waiting for me patiently. But I had to leave everything behind. So what you have to do with Tinea versicola is a comprehensive overview to strengthen your immune system and figure out where the exposure is coming from. Luann says, hello from Aurora. Hi, Luann. Dorada's here. Can you tell me what is the difference between E3 and wheat rescue? While I'm eating out, I would like to have a protection not only from gluten, but also from dairy. E3 is remarkable for that. E3 has been out now for about almost 10 years now. And we've got hundreds and hundreds, and I don't know, maybe thousands of testimonials for E3. That it works on the top 8 allergens to fully digest wheat, dairy, corn, soy, eggs, peanuts, fish, and shellfish within 60 to 90 minutes, depending on which food you're talking about. With wheat, it's 60 minutes. And with fish, it was 90 minutes. And the others are between. But before this food gets out of the stomach, and that's what's really important. There are many gluten digesting enzymes. And most of them are good and they work, but they take 3 or more hours to work. And as some of you know, the sentries standing guard in your gut to protect you are right inside the first part of the small intestine. When food comes out of the stomach, the sentries are right there. So if anything comes in that's a threat, because you've heard me say before, we have the same immune system as our ancestors thousands of years ago. And our immune system in the gut, what did it have to protect our ancestors from? Well, a primary thing, the ancestors, they're always looking for food, walking around, they grab some wild raspberries, or they grab something to eat, they smell it, they taste it, then they eat it. And if it's got bad bacteria on it, and they can't smell or taste that unless it's putrid, but if it's got some bad bacteria, the acid in your stomach deals with that. And if anything gets past the acid in your stomach and into the first part of the small intestine, that's where the sentries are standing guard to make sure no bugs, no threats can get into the body. And it activates that entire inflammatory cascade. Now that mechanism, by the way, for everyone to understand, and there's so many studies on this now that reference it all the time, is that sentry standing guard mechanism gets activated every time humans eat wheat. Every time. And Professor Fasano from Harvard, one of my friends and mentors, just published a paper in January, and he said the immune system in the gut mistakenly considers gluten as a bacterial parasite. So that's why every human gets transient intestinal permeability every time they eat wheat, is because as soon as it comes out of the stomach, because your stomach can't digest this, as soon as it comes out of the stomach, the sentry standing guards get activated, thinking there's a bacteria here that's dangerous, and here comes intestinal permeability and the inflammation right away, within 5 minutes. And I've got the videos that with 5 minutes. So that's why you have to digest wheat before it comes out of the stomach. So you can't take the enzymes, the gluten freedom or gluten ease or gluten digest, whatever they're called. You can't take those and feel protected once you understand the science, because they don't work for 3 to 6 hours traveling through the gut. And they'll break down the wheat before it gets into the large intestine, so it'll protect that, but it doesn't protect against the systemic inflammation. That is why you have to break it down within 60 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. Now, E3 is very, very good at doing that, very good. Now, science improves and all that, so what is it with wheat rescue? Well, I put that formula together last year, and we're going to be announcing it in more detail coming up in probably the next month or so. but some people have heard about it. Wheat Rescue, I added a couple more things. I added some hydrochloric acid because it's called the 40-40 rule. By the age of 40, most of us are only making 40% of the hydrochloric acid we're supposed to. And so we get lots of digestive problems. So I added a little bit of hydrochloric acid, not much at all, safe for everybody to take. And we added a couple of more enzymes to it because the E3, the studies are very clear, it breaks down gluten completely. 99.9% of any inadvertent exposures to gluten. Wheat Rescue, with the added ingredients called ANPEP and tolerase, breaks down more of the peptides of wheat. Now, I'm not sure if E3 does or not. The science wasn't done to look at more of the peptides of wheat, but we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonials, and we've put a few thousand people, I think, on E3, and we do pre and post tests, and when they're really compliant, they follow our recommendations. The post test is always, not always, is most of the time clean, meaning they have no more antibodies to wheat, so it's working. Because inadvertent exposures to wheat occur every day. And when we eat gluten-free foods, some of you have heard me talk about the studies on gluten-free foods. Columbia, Peter Green and Ben Liebwall at Columbia last year, in March of last year, they published the paper in the journal Gastroenterology. They took 804 people, gave them testing equipment all over the country, and they had them go into restaurants and order from gluten-free menus. They ordered 5,624 different items on gluten-free menus. When the waiter or waitress walked away from the table, they opened their briefcase, put the testing equipment here on the table, and when the food was served, they took it and immediately put some in the testing equipment. 32% of everything on a gluten-free menu is not gluten-free. 53% of gluten-free pizza is not gluten-free. 51% of gluten-free pasta is not gluten-free. And you sit and you go, what? I'm being healthy. You know, Marzi and I love gluten-free pizza and gluten-free pasta. And when we're in Italy, we'll have it maybe once every 10 days or so. There's a great restaurant not too far from us that hand makes gluten-free pizzas. They're really good. I like them with sardines and capers and mushrooms, wild mushrooms and tomato sauce. It's really good. But 51% of gluten-free pizzas are not gluten-free. So that means you're really working hard to be gluten-free. You do it just as hard as you can. 6 months later, you do the blood test and it comes back and you still got antibodies to gluten. You say, Doc, I'm not eating any gluten. I'm not cheating. I'm really not cheating. I say, well, I believe you. There's something else here. And I knew that for years. That's why we put E3 Advanced Plus together. And that's on our website. And I don't have any staff on here tonight posting because usually their computer is hosting and I come on and they post all the links. So I don't know how to post any links, so I'm not doing that tonight. So you'll have to go to my website and look for E3 Advanced Plus. It works really well, really, really well. Elizabeth says, hello from Australia. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here. Could you give me best advice for ulcerative colitis diet and treatment? Fecal transplant is a question mark. Very overwhelmed. Thank you. You should be overwhelmed. You know, you have an autoimmune disease that your colon is on fire. You've got an itis of your colon, the colonitis, ulcerative colitis, and it's ulcerating, meaning the fire is extensive. You have to put the fire out. And the medications that are often recommended can help a little bit, but they can't put the fire out. You have to identify where is the gasoline coming from. Is it gasoline or kerosene, right? Is it gluten or mold, or arsenic or lead, or aluminum or bisphenol A, or trichloroethylene or benzene, or Klebsiella pneumoniae bacteria, or Proteus bacteria? Where is it coming from? So Everybody asks for best treatments. And, there's some things that often help a little bit more often or not than not. Like with high blood pressure, a low salt diet, if you carry the genes to be sensitive to salt, is very helpful to do. Back to the high blood pressure question for a minute. If you go on Amazon, you can get the book by my friend Dr. Mark Houston, just like the city, Mark Houston, and he's from Vanderbilt University. And I think the title of the book is What Your Doctor Won't Tell You About about Hypertension. Yeah, I think that's the name of the book, but it's Mark Houston. It's an excellent book that gives you the big picture on high blood pressure. So for ulcerative colitis, you must rebuild the microbiome, because obviously the tube that starts in the mouth and goes to the other end, part of that tube is your colon, and that part of the tube is ulcerating because it's so itised, it's so inflamed. Well, the rest of your GI tract is probably also inflamed, including your mouth. And many people with ulcerative colitis, they brush your teeth and spit the water out. You got pink water or red water, get a little blood when you brush your teeth or you floss. You got gum disease. You've got periodontitis. You've got an itis of the periodontal tissue. So usually the entire GI tract is inflamed. So you have to look at what's causing this. So our ulcerative colitis patients, we don't hold back any punches. I mean, we're doing treatment of the oral microbiome with dental-sided toothpaste and dental-sided pump spray to change the microbiome of the mouth. We're doing food sensitivities to make sure you aren't eating things that are putting gasoline on the fire, because the most frequent source of fuel on the fire is what's on the end of your fork. It's critically important you address your foods. And the foods testing, there's a new era in laboratory medicine. They're called the Zoomers, because you zoom in on the problem. Wheat zoomer, dairy zoomer, corn zoomer, egg zoomer, soy zoomer, lectin zoomer. You zoom in on the problem, and they've just announced recently they'll accept zoomer tests from out of the country. And I talked about that in detail on Base Hits. It's not set up anywhere yet, and we can do it for you, but it's a pain in the butt at this point. So we have to send you the test kit, and the test kits now are extremely accurate, 97 to 100% every single time. That's why Mayo Clinic calls it a new era in laboratory medicine. It's called sensitivity and specificity. You've never seen test results like this before. And you can do it with a finger prick. That makes it so much easier for international, because what you can do, we send you the test kit, you open up the card, you poke your finger, you put the blood on the card, you wait till it dries, you put it in the envelope, you ship it off FedEx to the lab. But it's got to get to the lab within 6 days of your finger touching that card, or else it's invalid. So it's a risk for you that if UPS or FedEx they make a problem, like you'll check if you're in Australia and you go to your FedEx office, you say, look, if I bring a letter-sized envelope to you and I want to ship it to California as fast as possible, how quickly can you get it there? Oh, well, ma'am, we can get it there in 3 days. Guaranteed. Yes, ma'am, guaranteed. And it'll cost you $79 or whatever it costs. So you order the test from us, and I'm not set up to do it, but we will do it for you. And but you're out of the country, so my team doesn't know what the shipping is to send you this test kit to Australia. So they have to take the time to figure out, to check the postal rates and have some special process they do to send it to you. So we have to charge you a little more for the shipping, because it takes more time to do this, and we're not set up yet. I don't know what it is to Australia, or actually not me, but my team doesn't know, or New Zealand or different parts of Australia. We don't know, but we have to find out. That means they have to call the post office, or they have to go online to FedEx or whatever, however they're going to figure it out. So it's a real nuisance right now, but I'll do it for you. My team will do it. But you just have to understand, if you go jump through all the hoops, you do everything correctly, they said 3 days, and 9 days later you're tracking this thing and it still hasn't arrived, you've lost the entire price of that test because the lab's not going to refund to you, right? Because it arrives late. So you have to be sure that you can get the test there on time. And my team can't take this 15 minutes to explain to every person who wants the test this. So I still have to do a video that's not done yet to explain what I've just explained to you. And I can't record this today, unfortunately, because I'm doing this myself because of all the tech problems we had today. So blah, 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 blah. That's all of the technology of all this stuff. I'm so sorry to go down that rabbit hole. But for someone with ulcerative colitis in Australia, those are the best tests in the world. I lecture all over the world. There's no tests like these to find out what foods your body currently thinks are gasoline on the fire. And that's one component. But are there heavy metals? Are there toxic chemicals? Are there bacterial infections? You have to look at all of it with ulcerative colitis. That's called a functional medicine approach. And my team is well trained at consultations at theDr.com to deal with that. So you certainly have access to our team to work with you if you wish. Mia's here from North Wales. Hi, Mia. And a green heart. Thank you so much. That's really nice. Bridget says, I'm glad you're discussing inflammation. I was diagnosed with MS 20 years ago. Can severe tight muscles and or fascia tightness and pain be due to inflammation as well? Absolutely. Please suggest where I should begin to rid inflammation. So much information out there. There is, Bridget, and it's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. You've got a couple of options. You can work with my team. They're really well trained in this approach. Or you can read my books to get the big picture view. There's 2 books, The Autoimmune Fix and You Can Fix Your Brain. And it'll drop your jaw, everything you'll learn. Or you can enroll in the base hits that I've just done. The last one finished last night. I did 3 hours last night, but they're all recorded, so they're going to be available. And I go into detail. When you want to get healthy, what's the big picture that you have to look at? And it was the topics for each week was detoxification, critically important in this world today, because some of you have heard me say this. It's now the Journal of Pediatrics, arguably the #1 journal in the English language for children's health, says that our government has failed miserably to protect our children's health. Because now it's 247 pounds of chemicals per person per day that are manufactured or imported into the United States. 247 pounds, that's 5 50-pound bags trying to lift up 50-pound bags. 5 for each person. It's 27 trillion pounds per year. And when you do the math of how many people in the United States divided by 365 days, it's 247 pounds per person per day. And you'd say, what? That's the flame retardant that's in the bed sheets and the blankets that you use on your bed and in your sleeping garments. And this stuff outgasses every day. That's the formaldehyde in the press board of your kitchen cabinets if they're not solid wood that outgasses every day for years. And it's minor amounts. And there's no evidence that that amount of chemicals is toxic to humans. There's absolutely no evidence. And that's how they got away with this crap. Excuse me. They paid the lobbyists off to pass this legislation that says, well, the amounts that people are exposed to, if it's toxic to humans, then they can't do it. But none of this is toxic to humans, but it's accumulative. So give me 20 years now of flame retardant chemicals that you've been sucking in every day, and your detox pathways are a bit compromised. Give me 20 years of that. Now you've got toxic levels of flame retardant chemicals in your brain, and your brain's on fire. and you're 40 years old and you're not remembering the way you used to. So it's this whole world of toxins that we're being exposed to. So that was the first week detox of the 4 sessions that I've just completed. That one was about 2.5 hours of me like this, just downloading and downloading and downloading, but in an organized way so that people can get the big picture. And I keep saying during these sessions, don't try to remember all this. You'll get overwhelmed. Just sit back and listen and just get a bigger picture. Just listen, and you can listen to it again and again, again and again. And the result will be that you'll get it. And you'll understand that detoxification is now a critical component for every human on the planet for the rest of their lives. You don't do a detox program once a year and think you're okay right now, because the amount of chemicals we're being exposed to, when the sunlight comes through the window, sometimes you can see the dust in the air if it's the right angle, right? When you see the sun coming through, that dust, you're breathing that dust. That dust is phthalates, the chemicals used to mold plastics that are in the plastic blinds that outgas into the air. And the plastic on this tripod, the light here that's shining on my face, it's made of plastic. The wrap around the light is plastic. My cell phone is wrapped in plastic. It's a protective, EMF protective shield, but it's plastic. And all these plastics outgas phthalates into the air. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of plastic blinds is toxic to humans. That's how they got away with this. But you're breathing that in, and you're breathing it every single day, 24/7. And you don't taste it, you don't smell it, but it accumulates. I'll give you one example of this. Some of you have heard this. 346 pregnant women in Chicago in the 8th month of pregnancy. They collected their urine and they measured 5 phthalates. Just 5 of the hundreds of phthalates that are out there. They measured 5 in the urine. One was BPA, or bisphenol A, the one many of us have heard about in plastic water bottles. They took the results of those urine tests and they put it into fourths. The lowest, the next one, the third, and the highest. They then followed the offspring of these pregnancies for 7 years. When these kids turned 7 years old, they did Wechsler IQ tests on them. There's not much in medicine that's all or every. This was every. Every child whose mother was in the highest quartile of phthalates in urine in pregnancy, healthy pregnancy, she feels fine, compared to the children whose mothers were in the lowest quartile of phthalates of urine in pregnancy, healthy pregnancy, she felt fine. But those whose moms were in the highest quartile, their IQs, every child, 7 points lower than these kids whose mothers were in the lowest quartile. Now that doesn't mean anything to anybody until you realize that 1 point difference in IQ is noticeable. 7 points difference is the difference between a kid working really hard, getting straight A's, and a kid working really hard, getting straight C's. This kid doesn't have a chance in hell of doing well in school because their brain never developed properly. Then just go on Google and type in phthalates, PHTHALATES, phthalates and neurogenesis, nerve growth. Here come the studies. And you see this and you go, what? And when you understand that our bodies are accumulating all this stuff, well, where's mom getting phthalates? There's no plastic blinds in my house. Where am I getting phthalates? Nail polish leaches phthalates into your bloodstream in 3 to 5 minutes. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of nail polish into the bloodstream in 3 to 5 minutes is toxic to humans. Plastic storage containers in your kitchen. You put leftover chicken in the plastic storage container in the refrigerator. The next day you eat the chicken, it's got phthalates in it. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach out of plastic storage containers into your food overnight in the refrigerator is toxic to humans. That's how they get away with this. But what's happening is that it can be accumulating in your body. And it's 247 pounds per person per day. So you need to understand how to detox. What are the foods that help detox? What are the nutrients that help detox? That's that whole first week I did of detoxification. Then we did the immune system. What is the immune system? What's its purpose? How do you support it? What are the nutrients to take? What nutrients do you not take when you're fighting a flu virus? All of that. I went through all of that. And then inflammation. And then last night was gut brain and the microbiome. So any of you that have autoimmune conditions right now, any of you that have health conditions that you don't know what to do with, I'd recommend you go to theDr.com/base hits and register for this thing and download and watch each one of them, because it was, I did a little bit of presentation with slides, then it was 2 hours, 2.5 hours of answering really specific questions as best as I could. Okay, Sonia's here from Ohio. Hi, Sonia. Denise from Nebraska. Hi, Jennifer. Mary's here. Howdy. Howdy, Mary. Betsy says, my dad's hair tested high for arsenic and he's eating lots of rice. What's a good detox for it? There are so many ways of detoxing that are helpful. You need some help. Please don't try to do this on your own. And arsenic, just type complications of, type in arsenic and cancer, and you'll see how important it is to get this arsenic out of your body. Go to consultations at theDr.com, find a functional medicine practitioner where you live, but don't try to do heavy metal detox on your own. Gwendolyn says, I've just bought a new wooden bed frame and it smells quite strong. Yeah. I've been keeping the windows open as much as possible during the day, but it's winter in New Zealand, so I have to close them at night. Is there something I can clean it with to help? No. It's soaked in the wood. It's going to outgas. I'm concerned about breathing in the fumes. Good. You should be. I use Biocidin throat spray and take Metapol twice a day. Okay, Biocidin throat spray helps with bacteria, fungus, viruses, not the chemicals that you're being exposed to, but it's also an anti-inflammatory, so it might help soothe some of the inflammation in your throat. I'd go to theDr.com / I think it's Air Doctor, or go to theDr.com and the tab that says recommendations, hit that tab and scroll down to the Air Doctor and get an air filtration system in your house, in your bedroom. Critically important. My daughter just moved into a new home with her family, 2 kids, young kids, my 2 grandchildren, and my housewarming gift to them, part of the housewarming gift is air filtration systems on every floor. The Air Doctor. Air Doctor in the family room downstairs where the kids play. Air Doctor on the main floor, living room, dining room, kitchen. Air Doctor on the upper floor, bedrooms. So that's what I do. And it's true for everything you bring in your house. It's going to outgas. It's going to continue to outgas. I don't know. Oh, yes, there are some things that you can use that can reduce some of that. Let's see. In my book, You Can Fix Your Brain, I've got an entire section on making your own cleaners at home that help to wood cleaners. One of them is a wood cleaner. I'm sorry, I don't remember the formula for that, but it's in that book. And you make it at home. It's healthy. It's organic. It's clean, and it pulls the old varnish, the dust, the residue out of the wood, and helps to keep the wood healthy. Kat said, I read that even organic rice isn't that great. That's true, Kat. I've heard also, but it's better. Organic rice is better. You're a little safer. That white is better than brown. One holistic doctor said that Marsh-grown rice is the best. Well, Marsh-grown rice may have less arsenic because it's not agricultural irrigation water. So there's probably some truth to that, and that might be wild rice, because I think that's Marsh-grown. I'm not sure. But it's a problem. It's really a problem. And you want a rice grower that tests their water or that tests their rice, and you want to see the analysis, the metal analysis on the rice. And companies don't give you that information freely. You have to write to the company or call the company and inquire And when you find one of those companies, you like buy a lot of rice, so you've got some stockpile. But that's true. I mean, this 247 pounds per person per day of all these chemicals, many of them toxins, that have been coming in for years into the United States, almost a decade now, almost a decade of this. That article in the Journal of Pediatrics was from 2011. So it's almost a decade. So it's more now than 247 pounds. I just don't know what the updated amount is. But, it's 250 pounds a day. It's probably more now. Our bodies are walking sewage dumps. Every woman of childbearing age needs to do a detoxification program for her reproductive system before she gets pregnant. Before. I mean, why is autism skyrocketing through the roof? When I came out in practice, it was 1 in 10,000. Now, the latest news from CDC is 1 in 36. Why? It's because these kids' brains are not developing properly. I gave you one example with phthalates. Mom accumulates phthalates for 25 years from nail polish and plastic blinds and all the plastic in a house and credit card receipts. You get bisphenol A, that's a phthalate, on credit card receipts. I don't touch those credit card receipts anymore. Do you know what I do in a restaurant or something? I sign it, and then I take a picture of the receipt. That's how I keep my receipts now. I take a picture of it, send it to the accountant, and it's done. I don't touch those credit. I leave it on the table because you get bisphenol A in your hand, and it goes right through into your bloodstream, right through. When you start reading about bisphenol A, and you say, "Oh, well, my plastic bottles are BPA free." Well, that's because they're using BPS now, and they put on the bottle BPA free. As a marketing tool, BPS is more toxic than BPA. You can't use plastic bottles. If that's all that's available, it's better than nothing, when you drink the water, because being dehydrated is much worse than the minor amounts of BPA that you get in drinking water out of a plastic bottle. So you always drink water first, but you keep trying to get cleaner sources of water, right? Gerda says, if you suffer from SIBO and ulcerative colitis at the same time, which one should you treat first? You treat them both. Can SIBO cause inflammatory bowel disease or vice versa? Oh, well, really good questions, Gerda. And I understand you're not a gastroenterologist, so there's no reason why you should know this. But your digestive system is a tube from the mouth to the other end. It's one big long tube. And when you have inflammatory bowel disease, it means that below the stomach, that tube is inflamed. And when you have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, it means you've got way too much of the wrong bacteria causing inflammation. Do you think they're connected? And there's so many gastroenterologists that used to say, even there's still some that say, well, food has nothing to do with your colitis. Are you kidding me? I've got a tube that's highly inflamed, ulcerating, because there's so much fire going on inside the tube, and you're telling me what I put down there has nothing to do with what's going on in the environment? And then you do a blood test, and you see that you're highly sensitive to wheat, highly sensitive to dairy, that your immune system is doing all it can to fight those things, and you realize that's gasoline on the fire. That's contributing to the inflammation I have in my inflammatory bowel disease. It's not rocket science. It's so frustrating sometimes when our experts say stupid things like food has nothing to do with inflammatory bowel disease. What kind of nonsense is that? I'm sorry. We had technical difficulties getting on today, and it upset me to come on late with you guys. And so I'm a little riled up here tonight. So I love your questions. It gives me a chance to discharge a little bit, right? So, okay. Teresa says, Hi from Boynton Beach, Florida. I've been to Boynton Beach. Do you like the GI map test or bioenergetics test or another test for food sensitivity or allergy? GI map is not a bad test at all. The most comprehensive test for food sensitivities, bar none, anywhere in the world are the Zoomers. In geek language, the accuracy of a test is called the sensitivity and specificity. The first sensitivity test that came out was these weirdo medical doctors in the 1950s that said, you know, if I take a little needle and I dip it in tomato and then I poke the skin with the needle, if you get a redness around that, your immune system's saying the tomato's not good for you. And every traditional doctor in the world said, what kind of nonsense is that? That's just ridiculous. You think poking the skin with a little bit of banana is going to tell you if you're sensitive to banana? And if you read some of the literature from back then, it's jaw-dropping how mean they were and how accusatory, but really not, because that's what they said to us when we started talking about intestinal permeability and leaky gut in 1980. I was called a nutcase by so many people, right? You know, so it's common. Those in traditional care will tend to be a little more, what kind of nonsense is that? It happens all the time. So the testing, laboratory testing, the sensitivity and specificity of the pinprick test. Oh, yeah. So these doctors did this, and then they started writing papers and case studies. So, you know, I poked this person and I found the foods that they seemed to react to. I took those foods out of their diet and they got better. What kind of a nutcase statement is that? And that happened again and again. But as more and more people, more and more doctors said, really, you know, all right, I'll try that, because people demanded this new test. More doctors started doing it. Then they tried to regulate it. Say, well, we have to put some boundaries around this so people don't make claims and all that. And then they formed a group within medicine, and they called themselves allergists. That's how allergists came about, was the crazy ones poking the skin with the needle when they dipped the needle in some food and then poked the skin, because people couldn't understand how that could possibly work. But it worked. And that's how allergists came about. And allergists still today poke your skin. But we know the sensitivity and the specificity of that is 46% for adults and 54% for children, meaning it's wrong half the time, completely wrong. But they still use the test because they're allergists and this is how they were trained. And, you know, this is what we do and this works. And it was great in the 1950s and 1960s. And it's helpful to look for that particular response. It's called an IgE response. But Mayo Clinic published in January of 2016 the paper that woke me up and said it's a new era in laboratory medicine, a completely new era in laboratory medicine. And the sensitivity and specificity of these tests, it's called silicone chip technology. And the sensitivity and specificity is 97 to 99% sensitivity and 98 to 100% specificity. And every laboratory in the world says, well, that's utter nonsense. It's not possible to do that. Because they're using the old technology. This technology, published by Mayo Clinic, I've got 5 papers now from teams at Mayo Clinic, 2 papers, I think, from Columbia University. Many cutting-edge gastroenterologists are now talking about these food sensitivity tests because there's nothing like them anywhere in the world. They're called the Zoomers. Wheat Zoomer, dairies because you zoom in on the problem, egg Zoomer, lectin Zoomer. That's how you find out with a high degree of accuracy. The only time they're not accurate is if your immune system's worn out and your immune system can't respond properly anymore. So if you have, as long as you have adequate levels of total IgG, total IgA, and total IgM, these tests are right on the money every single time. And you go to my website and you can download the information on the Zoomers whichever ones you're interested in, take it to your doctor and say, please order this test. And if they won't, you can order the test from us. That's how you find out what foods you are sensitive to. And that was for Teresa. Luann says, I had my SpectraCell test done. Luann's in Denver. I'm a nutrition deficient with vitamin A, CoQ10, zinc, borderline with choline, biotin, vitamin D3, been taking 5,000 with K and panathenic. However, I am still bruising on my legs and sometimes on my arms for no reason. Could this be a platelet issue? What should I be asking my doctor? I did find out I was having trouble with high oxalates. My palpitations are gone, pain in legs gone, no headaches. Why am I still bruising? I'm almost well for the first time in years. Way to go, girl. High five. High five. And this is what it's like, everyone. You know, you got a ton of symptoms, this, and you start learning about this big picture, and then you just start, you know, my second book is called You Can Fix Your Brain, just 1 hour a week to the best memory, productivity, and sleep you've ever had. And that's not a cutesy subtitle. That is the only way to be successful, is 1 hour a week, because it's overwhelming to try to grasp this information. Well, how many things have I told you tonight already? Air filtration systems, mercury, phthalates in the air, babies' brains from mom accumulating all these toxins over. All this is like, what? Again and again, but you got to wake up if you want to be healthy. This is the world we've got now. It's 250 pounds of chemicals per person per day that we're all being exposed to. We're all walking sewage dumps. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but everyone is trying to be formal about, well, yes, detoxification is a valuable thing to do. And when you hear a doctor say something like that, it doesn't do this to you. But when I tell you you're a walking sewage dump, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You can't. When you have degenerative diseases, your body's inflamed. The only way that you're going to reduce that baseline of inflammation, remember what I said at the beginning of all this today about the graph and the baselines of inflammation? The only way you reduce the baseline of inflammation, and all degenerative diseases are inflammatory diseases, and the only way to reduce the baseline of inflammation is to detox and to learn about your environment and how are you sucking the stuff in and what foods are you eating. And well, I can't afford organic, then buy vegetables, but go to my website to My Green Fills under the recommended. Go down and see the interview I did on Facebook Live with Stephen Ezell, and he talks about this healthy spray that you take from him, and you spray it on your inorganic broccoli, and you dip it in the water, and oh look, it's shining now because the wax has been taken off and the chemicals are off just by spraying your inorganic vegetables with My Green Fills, with his product. So if you're not buying organic, everyone needs to go to My Green Fills. But you know, it's overwhelming. So it's 1 hour a week, but every week a little bit more, like Luann is doing. She did this test and she found out all these things, but there's more and there's more. So the question, Luann, is why am I still bruising? Could this be a platelet issue? Could be. Check your platelets. That would be important to do. But also, I would titrate. I would do the Pauling protocol for vitamin C, but I can't recommend that to you. I have to remember to say I can't give recommendations for any specific health complaints. You know, this is a legal thing, right? So I'm not telling anybody to do anything. Now, what I do, and I've done many times, you know, I've got this video of Linus Pauling, Dr. Pauling, only man to win the Nobel Prize twice in his lifetime. I have a video of him when he was 84, and he says, yes, my wife and I take 18,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day, and when I get old, I will take more. And you just start laughing. Wait, you're 84, man. What do you think is old, right? But I personally take about 8,000 a day, sometimes a little more. But those of you that have heard me before, the first thing you do in the morning, you wake up, you go to the bathroom, very next thing, you drink 2 big glasses of water. I put 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C in each one. It's Vitality C. It's on our website because I use that one because it's got ribose, which gives you a little more energy in your mitochondria. So that's the one I use, Vitality C. I take it every day. So yeah, Luann, so what I do, and I've talked to many patients over the years, is you do a vitamin C calibration. So you start with, I like the Vitality C for this, but any powdered vitamin C. And you take about 500 or 1,000's good, 1,000 milligrams or so every waking hour, and you drink it down. And you keep track of how many you're taking. So by the end of the day, you took 12, or you forgot a couple times, so you took 8, all right? You write it down, 8,000 milligrams. Next day, every waking hour, and you keep doing every waking hour every day until you get a little loose bowel or diarrhea. As soon as you get a little loose bowels, you look and say, oh, okay, I've taken 6 today. You stop for a day or so, and then you take 75% of the amount where you got diarrhea. So if you were taking 10 servings a day, and on the 3rd day you get diarrhea, you say, okay, that's it, 10. Then you wait for a day or two, just kind of a little washout, and then you take 75% of that dosage, so that's 7.5. And you take 7.5 servings every day until you get loose bowels or diarrhea. They say, okay, stop, wash out for a day or so, and then you take 75% of 7.5, which would be about 4.5 or 5. And you take 4.5 or 5 servings per day until you get loose bowels or diarrhea. Wash out for a day or two, and then you take 75% of that dosage every day until you don't get diarrhea anymore. That's the amount of vitamin C you need. That's how you tell. It's called a vitamin C calibration. The only downside to that is there's very, very few people that have a gene that makes them vulnerable to forming kidney stones. Very rare, but if you have a family history of kidney issues, you have to work with a functional medicine doctor to see if you're vulnerable to getting kidney stones. But for everyone else, no family history of kidney stuff, as far as you know, don't worry about it. It's very safe for you. That's how you know how much vitamin C to take. And that's the first thing that I would do with bruising, is a vitamin C calibration. Oh, we put in Dr. Carnahan's website for those of you that have the mold issues. Oh, what a nice picture of her, too. That's really great. Thank you for doing that, team. What can be done for vitiligo following gut healing? Hi, Mia. Following gut healing and eating plant-based diet, taking supplements, but still there, asking for a friend. It's an autoimmune disease, so the entire premise of autoimmunity, your friend's missing something. My daughter developed this when she was a teenager. Dad! And it was a little bit on an arm. So, oh my God, what is this? So, honey, that's an autoimmune disease called vitiligo. Ah! I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much. Well, what do I do? What do I do? Well, if you do this, this, and this, there's a chance that it can clean up. It'll take 3 to 6 months. Take these vitamins every day, and I gave her folic acid, pretty high doses of folic acid and a B complex, and proteolytic enzymes, and no dairy, no wheat, and no added sugar, and no cigarettes. My daughter was smoking at that time. She didn't think I knew, but I knew. You know, she could smell it. And so she was scared, teenage girl, so she did that, and it cleaned up in about 2 months or so, something like that. And it happened again when she was 19 or 20 or freshman or sophomore year at college. Dad! I said, well, honey, you know what to do. I mean, you're off at school now, and you know, you guys go to Starbucks at 10 o'clock at night, and then you go out and party. After you get caffeined up, then you go out. You know what to do. So she cleaned up her life. I sent her the nutrients, and it was gone in 3-4 months, something like that. So it's an autoimmune mechanism. So you got to clean up. Your friend is missing something, Mia. There's something she's missing. It might be bacterial. It might be chemical, common chemical sensitivity with vitiligo. That's fairly common. Okay, folks, I know that I've gone over an hour and I'm just getting warmed up. I did this last night for 3 hours, like this. So I'd suggest you consider base hits if you want this kind of information. I don't hold, I'm kind of on the roll from last night because this is how I was last night. And it's all recorded in base hits for detox, for immunity, for inflammation, and for the gut-brain connection. And I'm going to do a bonus one next week on the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, why your adrenals wear out. And so it's really about what stress does to you and how it sets you up for disease. That's going to be part of all of this. So it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so very much. I look forward to seeing you next week. My apologies for the late start tonight, and have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.